Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Hey gang, we're back again with the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. I am Charlie Carden, your Trek Lord of West Michigan, fleet captain of the USS Grand Petoskey, here with my stalwart companions, the Fantastic Kay. Hello.
Hi, how are you?
We're doing delightful. And my steady Eddie, the guy that makes the engines do what the engines do, that would be Peter Stein. Peter, what's cracking?
Warp cores. Hopefully not, actually.
Ooh, yeah. You don't want to crack that dilithium. That's a real bummer. So this is episode 98. So crazy to me. I've been making this show with a variety of different guest hosts since the fall of 2020, since COVID times, the old COVID times. And we're about to hit our 100th episode. We have something very special coming up in about a month from now that we're getting prepared for. I won't spoil the surprise, though I'm not 100% certain I didn't say something about it already, but I'm not going to say it again. So, Kay, you're missing. And now you're back. Whoops. Speak again.
I have a whiny dog.
No.
I'm with a 4-month-old puppy right now, so I apologize to
goodness.
any listeners who randomly hear whining.
Okay. No.
They just think they're going to die because they're in the other room.
No problem. Well, anyway, as always, we'd like to thank our stellar stable of top tier Patreons, folks that make all the wonderful bonus content that you get to listen to, like our great interviews, my cool program, The Facts of Geek Life, where we talk about old TV shows, Todd and I talking about old comics in the spinner rack. That would be our BFFs, Sean Stella and Henry Nias, and the fantastic Missy Merchant, close personal friend of everybody here on the show. Our best buds are Jamie and Andy, and we are just very grateful for you. If you'd like to learn more about our Patreon, please visit the secretfriendsunite.com landing page on Patreon. That would be patreon.com/secretfriendsunite, and learn all about it. So we have a special news feature that just 10 minutes ago, Peter said, hey, I want to talk about this thing. So I'm going to let you talk about that thing, Peter. Knock it out.
So I discovered today a slightly older news story, but it's not gotten a lot of traction. It's kind of fallen below the radar, obviously. The video game that we talked about a while ago, Star Trek Resurgence, done by the folks from Telltale. Well, it's not Telltale now, but it's the same people.
Sure.
Is now going to release sometime next month. It got pushed back from last year, and then they were dead quiet for a very long time, and then released a prequel comic over the last couple of months, and now we finally have a not solid date, but we have a solid release month. So something to look forward to, a post-Nemesis, pre-Picard series show set on a Centaur-class vessel. So it should be
great. I did read
Spock, actually, if you see the stuff.
Right.
So they got a voice actor to do a pretty good imitation of Leonard Nimoy.
Oh, wow. So, I did end up reading the comic. It didn't really blow me away. I don't even remember Leonard Nimoy being a part of it. So I guess I get. Yeah. I guess now I'm
setting up the
now I understand
the ship so that you have context for.
Well, then I didn't care for the prequel. I didn't care for the prequel to the post-quill. So I mean, I'll give it a go. I mean, if it's Telltale or what was Telltale, which they make all the big ones, The Last of Us, right? And they made like the Walking Dead games, which I played a little bit of one of those.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So they make the heavy hitters, right? So, Kay, do you have any input on Telltale games and stuff like that? Is that anything that grabs you?
I mean, I'm going to check it out for sure, just because it's Star Trek and it's a game. So yes, please.
Yes. Yeah. Right. There's not a lot of reverse commentary on that. So it's coming out next month. Do you have a date?
They don't have a date. They said that they'll be releasing the exact date soon.
Oh, that's
always one of those like
Right.
Great.
Great opportunity to nudge it into the background. So anyway, well, cool. Well,
so who knows?
I would say, stay tuned to our social media and certainly to our Discord if you don't belong to that, because when that kind of news comes out, that's where I tend to drop it, and I keep a pretty close eye on the kind of news. So anyway, cool. All right. Moving out of the news into our regular segment one, we have 2 great episodes of Star Trek Picard to talk about. So I'm going to elect Kay and her yippin' puppy dog to tell us about Picard, Season 3, Episode 8, Surrender, not the song by Cheap Trick, but do your thing.
All right, so we have left off from Episode 7 where Vadic has taken over the ship and the Titan. She is threatening to execute the bridge crew if Jack does not surrender. Which he does after they kill a lieutenant, after there's some kind of cat and mouse stuff that goes on with mind games with Vadic and with Jack going back and forth. Geordi decides that he's going to break the partition between Data and Lore to try to see which one will succeed. Luckily, spoilers, Data does, kind of by doing a pacifism. I'm going to slowly take you over from the inside where my memories are going to become your memories, and then no one will be able to tell where you end and I begin. So
psychological.
Just sound of some psychological stuff. Worf and Raffi randomly show up on the strike. I didn't remember them. I didn't remember them going to the strike, so I was kind of confused where I was like, Worf?
It was great.
Worf, is that you, Worf?
Yeah. So, and then we end up finding out that there's something weird with Picard's corpse, which obviously we were kind of suspecting because of everything that was going on, and it turns out that maybe he did not have the disease that they thought he did.
Irritmatic syndrome.
Yes, Irritmatic syndrome. So this one, it was interesting. I was a little worried because it seemed like they were kind of doing an evolutionary theme throughout it, that they were going to do some weird thing where like Jack was just the evolutionary, next human gene. Thing.
He's an X-Man. He's mutant boy.
I was like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. And they did not. So I was very, very grateful with that. And it was good to see the whole crew getting back together again. That
the band's back together. Oh, I know.
Yeah, the whole band's back together. So I did feel like again the weird situation with Riker and Troy just still seems very strange because. It wouldn't be strange if we hadn't seen them in such good relationship in the first season.
Right. Yeah, so it is very, very much
that they're having so much conflict, and they're talking about everything that happened when their son passed away, which was 7 years, I think, before we saw them in season 1.
So now almost a decade. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. So I was like, so what exactly is going, like, why are we bringing up all of this strife now? It seems like they could have figured out something else if they wanted there to be strife. I mean, honestly, I liked the idea of that strife. Just it kind of got ruined with the fact that we saw them in season 1 and everything was cool as far as we could tell.
Right.
So that was kind of a big hang up.
One of the biggest, complaints, whatever it is that people always said about the TNG cast and why, in later seasons we got a character like Ensign Ro who came along and, shook up the snow globe because she was, so big and bad and all this different stuff, is that they're very bland, to use Todd Oxford's favorite expression. There was no conflict. Everybody got along, yada, yada. Even, when Worf acted Worfy, everybody was like, ha, ha, ha. There was no big deal. But yeah, with Riker and Troy, and they're having a big heart-to-heart in the prison cell on the Shrike about we're still on the. Why are we? Neither one of us like living on Nepenthe. Why are we there? Why do we stay? And digging into their ultimate motivations. We know that they went there because the healing properties of the atmosphere, blah, 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 some kind of sci-fi stuff was supposed to be beneficial to their son, who ultimately passed away anyway. So the one thing that we really don't know is what precipitated him just being like, all right, we're on a break. Because it was kind of like we were on a break. That's why he's like meeting Picard in the bar and he's like, well, I'm not going to be missed at home anyway, and didn't want to say much more about it. So there's clearly something else, which I think the story's moved on to the point that we're not going to see it.
Yeah, it seemed like it was just kind of sloppy because the way that they were talking about it, the strife that seemed to happen was he got upset over how she had handled his grief when their son had passed away, because she had tried to kind of help numb that from him. And he was like, no, I need to experience that. But I'm like, that happened obviously a while ago.
Right. So something else occurred more recently. It's like he woke up one morning. I mean, God, did he wake up one morning and the psychic blocks failed for some reason or whatever it was? And he just like, I need to feel this and I need to, go off on my, dude's weekend with Picard or whatever it is that he ended up doing. So, and that's tough because again, you guys know that I have a son who passed away. Today's actually the 3rd anniversary of that happening. But I'm not with my ex-wife. So, and we had been divorced for a very long time when that occurred. He was a baby when she and I split. So we didn't deal with any of that together. So I can't really speak to that, but some other straw snapped to make that situation go down like that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that red door. So I got zero anything. I guess I've just become the dumbest. I had no idea what was gonna go on behind the red door. Did everybody else figure it out except for me?
I had a pretty good idea when they showed up.
Yeah.
But part of it was there was a musical cue.
Oh,
I pay attention to those very, very closely.
Yeah, and especially this season on this show, they've been always like, when they're looking at the ships around the Fleet Museum, and this one's the Defiant, dun, 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 or this one's Voyager, dun, 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 dun. Yeah. Big time.
They've been pretty good about using the score, the motifs mostly correctly, in my opinion.
Yeah. So. Most definitely. So, Peter, any other gigantic thoughts that you have about this one before we move on to your interpretation of what people are calling the most exciting thing in the God-known universe on episode 9?
Yeah, so I had 2 thoughts on this particular episode, other than the mind control, which was interesting. But Worf was again a highlight. Worf gonna Worf. That was great.
Mighty Worf Power Rangers.
A highlight.
And it was it was also hilarious of like him saying things and then Riker's like mildly inappropriate and Troy's like, well, it was just great.
Yes.
I have fun of you every time I jump to head off or whatever.
Of Worf, Riker, and Troy just having this weird relationship, and I thought it was great how they managed to bring that dynamic back and bring it back in a hilarious way.
Dealing with their strange quadrangle.
Yeah. So even though it was a Worf ex machina, like how the heck did he get there? But it was still like it was just I loved it.
Yeah.
The scene with Picard's corpse definitely was like once they were talking about stuff, I was like, oh, okay, I think I know what's going on here, which is what I was expecting. And then they tried to do like the sidestep, but we'll find out in the next episode it wasn't a sidestep.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But the one thing that I thought was a little weird, the one thing that was weird for me was the whole Data lore thing.
Mm-hmm. The big hug changing dots from red to blue.
No, more of the concept of my memories are what make me me, and so by you taking them, you are now me. I don't really like that concept. It's an interesting concept. It works in a computer way, but when you're trying to personify the two of them, and make them two individuals, it's very weird to me to be like the only defining characteristic of Data is his memory, and that was kind of the shtick in season 1 as well. And I'm just not the biggest fan of like the only thing that makes me who I am are my memories, and that's just kind of, to me, that's very reductionist, and so I didn't like how that worked. It works in the story, but I don't I don't think it's a very good way, nor a very Star Trek holistic way to look at a character. I think
is
that
maybe
to a character.
Is that maybe why we weren't crazy about Shinzon and Nemesis, because he said something to the effect of all I have is my feelings.
Problem, and then the whole like because I don't have the memories of you, I'm not you, and that whole, that weird dynamic in Nemesis where you have like, well, I'm only the way I am because of my experience. It's like no, there's more to it than that. So yeah, so like it's an interesting bit. It was cool to see Data and Lore argue with each other. Like,
I mean,
Brent Spiner did a great job being the two different versions.
When does he not? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's wild. Yeah, I mean, you guys hit all the big points. I also love, record date of time. That always, that romance is one that, or that romantic friendship is one I witnessed when I was growing up watching the show when I was a teenager and thinking, "Aw, it's nice they had a thing and now they're friends." And I have a friend like that in my life. My friend Tamara, we've been friends since we were 12 years old. She was my first girl crush thing, but we became lifelong friends. We're not going to go off and get married later. That part of it is not the same, but it's awesome, and it's proof to me that relationships evolve. So
I also want to say one more thing. This was the one episode where I thought the F-bomb was brilliant.
Right. Yes, exactly. The effing solid. See, look at us trying to keep it clean.
It was like, that was chef's kiss. That was great.
Very good. Was very sad to see, and I follow her on Twitter. Can't pronounce her name because it's long. Stephanie, it's like Shervik or something like that, who's Lieutenant Tavine. That was a very shocking death, and that was unfortunate. But they did let us know, particularly in this last half of the season, that it's one of those nobody is safe kind of deals. And we find out a little bit more about that in episode 9. So this is now Peter's baby, episode 9. Vox.
The
Volkswagen. Go for it.
So we begin with Troy doing an empathetic mind meld with Jack to discover what the source of the voices are and the red door. She freaks out and leaves before she tells him anything, and then we find out it's the Borg. Nobody saw that coming.
No one expects the Spanish Inquisition.
Nobody expects the Borg. So then it's like, oh no, we have to be careful because he's a security threat because the Borg are talking to him, and so we find out. Everyone's rushing back to Earth because Frontier Day is a big thing. They figure out that the reason that part of Picard's corpse is missing a brain piece is because they were taking a biological implant, for lack of a better description, and re-engineering its DNA to resequence into the DNA of practically all of Starfleet, but it only works on the young.
Right. Those under the age of 25.
Until 25, that part of the brain is still developing. And so anyone who was beamed through under 25 is now affected by this.
Which obviously people beam just like you take a car ride. It's pretty much the same deal.
So it's but we find out that's what the changelings were doing. That's why they're infiltrating Starfleet, is they're running everybody through the transporter to put this gene in.
Right.
So we get to see Frontier Day. We see a bunch of ships, and then we finally get to see the Enterprise F that they've teased the entire.
This would have been
by Admiral Shelby. They brought her back for a quick cameo.
Right, would have been the Janeway moment, I think. But
I was half expecting Janeway, and then I heard the voice, and then it was like, wait, name, okay,
right.
So then we see the Shelby is touting this whole network of ships thing where they can all do work together maneuvers. Titan gets there, tries to stop everything, and then the Borg trigger the assimilation through this DNA implant, causing Shelby to get take 2 in the chest.
Yeah, she's done
on camera. So sorry, guys, she did.
Yeah, she got less screen time than Ro.
It's sad, but she did. She's not coming back from that. So the fleet gets assimilated. So basically, you see all the younger characters, so the LaForges, all of the different people that we started to see on the Titan and everywhere else, they start to get assimilated. We hear a couple captains get blown up. The Excelsior gets destroyed because they managed to retake their bridge. And then the entire fleet turns on it, blows it up.
Right.
So
and
then
someone made a point, if I could, that Elnor from seasons 1 and 2, who was supposed to be on the Excelsior, was not there at the time. Somebody somewhere ferreted that out, and Terry Matalis went on Twitter and made that statement. So anyway, in case you were worried about Elnor,
it doesn't really matter. I'm sure if he had been on there, they would have made a bigger deal about it.
Right.
But so our gang finds out, decides we got to get out of here, and shuttles are immune to this network of ships because
sure, why not? Plot armor.
So they're going to run
shuttle armor.
Shuttle. To our great sadness, Shaw gets shot on the way. He is not 100% dead when we see him last, but we don't know.
I feel like he did the whole almost eyes roll back in the head and just
He's very likely dead,
eyes.
but the problem is I've seen people come back from so many random things. I don't
Right.
know 100%.
It's very
He's
true.
very likely dead. The way that they did it, they actually had him like finally recognize that who 7 of 9
right.
is, and actually treat her like a person as she's been asking him to for the entire
Right.
show.
With his dying breath.
With his dying breath. In the moment where he should hate her the most because Borg.
Right.
And he doesn't. So there, it's a huge character moment for him, which is great. It's well done. So the gang escapes, and they get to the Fleet Museum because they need a ship. And lo and behold, the only functional ship, the door is open, and it is the reason I'm wearing my dress uniform, the lady herself, the Enterprise D.
Yes, the finest lady. Well, half of her anyway.
Well,
but the top half.
They got the saucer from Viridian 3, and they were like, oh, well, we had to. And the rest of us are like, of course you had to. There was a civilization on another planet.
Now, point of order, I'm trying to remember from the dialogue of Generations. I thought they made it sound like Viridian 3 was uninhabited.
Viridian 4.
Yes.
Viridian 4, Viridian 6 had a pre-warp industrial civilization of about...
So, yeah. So it was too dangerous to just leave it there, even though
you can't leave it there. I mean, they sent a satellite
like a
out there to
Viridian's
find
Baker
it.
Dozen going on here.
Oh, there's an episode named Viridian's Baker's Dozen.
So they got the ship. Geordi was refurbishing it in secret to make it a surprise for Frontier Day, I guess. He's not entirely clear what he's doing, but he grabbed the pieces from.
I think it was just like your dad having a '69 Camaro in the garage, just because he could.
Yeah, so right.
He puts it back together, and apparently it's the only functional. Ignore the rest of the ships outside. It's the only functional ship.
It was the only one that wasn't connected, that was functional and wasn't connected to.
No, I know
the
that,
mainframe.
but we also have ships that are, several hundred years old.
But it doesn't mean that they weren't connected. The Enterprise D, it was on lockdown, so it's sorta.
I'm just saying, there's just a little bit of a hole there. It works.
Right.
I'm just saying
it does work.
There's a little hole. So they rebuild. You have an amazing scene where they get on board the ship and they start reminiscing. They make a joke about how the bridge does look a little bit different because it's not the original set. They rebuilt it.
Right. And they built it to TV specs, not the specs from Generations, because that bridge was trashed. A lot of people were like, well, the bridge from Generations had extra sides on the whatever, but that was all destroyed in the crash you saw.
The rest of the bridge, so you just rebuild it how you want. But they are correct.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So then we see a glorious scene of the entire ship powering up, and then the ship warps out to go do
super
save the
cool
day again.
That they can fly a ship that normally has 1,000 total crew, but probably 500 Starfleet personnel to operate it, and you have 7 people who are all on the bridge.
Drones. They've made a point of saying that. So.
Oh, right. Yeah, because he said, drones are loading the torpedo bay or whatever. And, they did okay in the same scenario in Star Trek 3 when our gang took
that was automated.
Yeah,
and that exactly. Really fast.
Yeah, that did not end up working out. So, yeah, this episode gave us both episodes gave us kind of the money shots of the money shots. We got everybody around a conference table in episode 8, and then in episode 9 we get the lady herself who's now going to run off to save the day. So, Kay, what are your thoughts? Break it down for me.
My big question, and again, we know that out of all of us, I am the least Star Trek technically savvy.
I know, that's why it all works.
Yeah, I was under the impression there was only ever one Borg queen at a time. And Agnes was the Borg queen.
Now I just read, I was reading, and I posted it on our Discord. I know not that everybody tunes into our Discord, but this was less than an hour ago. Terry Metalis, another big talk and interview, he said that Jurati Borg is a separate, not connected faction, which is not necessarily what I remember, but my sheer horror and disgust over all of season 2 of Picard has meant that I've not gone back and watched it again. Jurati Borg is elsewhere, not connected to the collective. We did see in this was part of what Metalis was having to say, and if I remember, I'll drop the article in the show notes. But anyway, it's on our Discord. If you're a listener and a subscriber to our Discord, you'll see it there. the Borg are very much still kicking, certainly at the time of Prodigy, which is before this, because we know that our gang bumps into Borg there. So the Borg is always kind of around. It's like, what would survive a nuclear holocaust? Twinkies and cockroaches. They're the cockroaches. Nothing's really necessarily ever going to rub them out.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and I wasn't so much that I was expecting them to be gone. It's just Jurati, like, she basically made an alliance with the Federation at the end of season 2. So the fact that now there's another whole section of the Borg that are like, no, actually, we're going to team up with the Changelings and still kick your ass and take you over.
This is apparently the same queen from the end of Voyager.
So it's Alice Krieger.
Another
sounded like her. Sounded like Alice Krieger.
I'm hoping that they do something to, like, in the last episode that we have, that they do something to address that, or that we get to see Alison Pill again as Jurati Borg. Because, I mean, first off, to give her another chance to not have to have horrible CG, and let them actually just do some decent makeup and costuming, and also because she can just devour any scene she's in. So I would love to see her have more screen time.
Totally.
But I feel like they did a decent job kind of just like putting everything together. It still feels kind of a little messy to me. I was very surprised that when they found out that Jack was Borg, immediately everybody's like changed about him. Like, I get that the Borg are dangerous, but also he's still the same person he was, 5 minutes before they knew he was Borg.
Right.
Or
he's not even Borg. He just has a transmitter in his
head. Yeah. And they didn't. The big thing, I was like, okay, so you have everybody in the room talking. You literally have someone who grew up with the Borg on your bridge right now.
Right.
Who might be able to help him with his transition, and no one's going to go get Seven? Like, just no one? We're not going to talk to her?
Especially with his mom being super doctor, that they would, lock him down in sick bay and figure out, some way to suppress this implant or whatever. Turns out in the end of it, there was, the damage was done.
Right.
Yeah, but
and
they
I think that it was just the way that they went about it did not help.
Right.
Because they basically were like, no, you're a danger to everyone else and you're basically a monster, so we're going to lock you in your room until we can figure it out. And then he was like, no, I don't like this idea.
I'm going to get answers. And then gets himself
right. And so and then things end up turning around.
And then Alice Krieger reappeared, so that was cool.
Yeah, no doubt about it. So, okay, let's, because we're kind of at this has been a longer segment and it's been great, but let's talk, each of you, one rock solid prediction for the finale. We know we're going to see Tuvok because it's been pre-told. So
we already have seen Tuvok.
Right, no, he said he was coming back. He was coming back a second time. He did. That did make the round. So, Peter, one thing that I would say, we'll go with hope because nobody knows what's going to happen. We know that the series is going to come to a conclusion. What's something you hope happens in episode 10, the series finale?
Well, something I know is going to happen is it's going to be basically what I said of Picard versus Locutus. Just it's going to be Jack. So I was hoping they weren't going to do that, but they're doing it.
Yes.
So that's just a prediction. I hope that they're going to have. Obviously, the Enterprise D is going to have to save the day. I hope they don't destroy her again. That would be hurt a lot. I already watched her die once. I don't need to see it again.
Right.
I know the show's obsessed with death, but please stop.
Right.
So I also predict that we're going to see likely Picard himself likely die at the end.
Yeah.
Just because everything seems to be wrapping up. So I think we're going to get the conclusion of some major character arcs. We're going to see the death of Picard, potentially the death of the Enterprise again. I hope not.
Yeah.
And we're going to see the death of the Borg Queen once again. So we're going to get the Borg being removed as a major threat from the Star Trek universe as we see it in the present. That's kind of where I'm thinking we're also going to see some other stuff, but that's if I stick to one thing, that's it.
Gotcha. All right, Kay, how about you?
I'm hoping, like I said, that we get to see Jurati Borg. That would be my big fingers crossing. And that I hope that it doesn't just become a emotional spill fest of, you were my father and you didn't love me. I didn't know about you. Now you can't do bad things. And it's just kind of like a talk fest of
Right.
Yeah,
yelling emotion at each other.
The talkies. I'm in a glass cage
Yeah.
of emotion. The Star Trek version.
So I hope that it doesn't, because Jack honestly has been a little whiny for me.
He's Luke Skywalker now. Well,
Yeah,
Wesley.
he's being a little bit. He's
episode
being a
4
little
Luke
bit of
Skywalker.
a
Yeah.
of a Wesley Crusher meets Luke Skywalker for me. So I'm hoping that we get a little bit less of the tormented soul, and that he can have
Right.
some more meat to him besides just, oh, I don't know, life is meaningless. Blah.
Blah blah blah. Well, I would also like to see a redemption from him, and being just like Janeway in Endgame, the last episode of Voyager, that he will turn the tables on the Borg Queen. And we're going to see obvious things like, all the people who have been Borgified will be deborgified, so that, the LaForge daughters will come back, and some of the other, well, they're really the only other young people we have left that we care about. And yeah, Picard's death seems, I'm not going to say I hope for it, but yeah, again, it does seem a fitting, arc to his story. And, reinforcing the perpetual sadness of, I found my father and now he's dead, blah, 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 very Shakespearean, which is, which is really, Star Trek at its heart. So
I think it would be a little poetic if Picard died saving Data.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And because they're both droids, so he's saving another. He's another version of Picard saving a third version of Data. Yeah, I think that'd be great to see him move on. So that's good stuff. Well, cool. We have just a few days left. This will air on Thursday of the Monday that you're listening to this. God, we have to wait like 2 whole weeks. I'm almost an advocate of us coming back to talk about this a little sooner, but we can decide that together. Maybe it'll give us a little bit of a chance to coagulate our thoughts, and then we'll also do maybe a season/series wrap up to just kind of wind out the segments. So, well, cool. Awesome. All right. Well, we are going to say goodbye to Peter as he is leaving us for the next portion of the show, because we're going to dig into the first part of season 3 of Voyager. So, Peter, where do people find you out there on the interwebs?
You can find me out on the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas on most things. I don't usually do much, but you can find me.
It's good to find him.
You can also find me on ELH's YouTube or Twitch, where I play a Vulcan engineer.
Fantastic. All right, we'll say goodbye to Peter, and after this a super brief pause, we will be back. Goodbye. We'll be back. All right, we're back. Time for do Voyager, but there's no 7 of 9 yet, so it's just the old gang. We're getting into the first part of season 3. This was part of the 1996 to 1997 season on television on the old UPN. Now, Kay, I've never asked you, when did you start watching Star Trek? So at this point, you would have been like 10, 11 years old.
I didn't start watching it until I was with Aaron, my spouse.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
We weren't married yet, but it's probably, we watched it on Netflix before it was actually streaming, but we would get the disc.
The disc. So this was like late aughts, probably? Late to mid aughts?
I would say probably... Yeah, it's probably sooner than or later than that. It was probably like early 2010s.
Okay, so not maybe 10 years after the show had been off the air, really, which because in 2001. Interesting. So I didn't know if you kind of discovered it as a kid and you were of that age, but who knows? Well, cool, good deal. All right, well, let's jump in. We're wrapping up. If you jump back, and again, this is the first time we're getting a real cliffhanger for this show. But we got a cliffhanger for this one, and we talked about the first part of it, obviously, way back when we were covering season 2, because again, our format is that we do a season at a time, but matching seasons. So we did, season 3 of TNG, season 3 of DS9, and now we're here. So it was quite a while back, but I'll grab the first one. This is a conclusion to what kicked off the end of what wrapped up the end of season 2. This is Basics Part 2, directed by Winrich Colby and directed or written by Michael Piller. So again, guy who helped co-create the show. From September of 1996, the crew must learn to survive on the inhospitable planet as the Doctor, crewman Suter, and Paris attempt to regain control of the ship. I was going into this already thinking, how did she let this happen? I mean, I think that's how we wrapped up talking about it season 2. We're like, what a stupid situation she got them into, because the whole thing was, Seska sends this message. Okulla found out that the baby isn't his and he's going to kill me. And Chakotay's like, I really think we should just let it go. And Janeway's like, no, I think we should go rescue this baby that may or may not be yours. And then they get into this whole situation and they lose the ship. So this is the aftermath of that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're on this planet. They don't have any rations. They don't have anything. They're just left to their wits, and they've got to find food. And thankfully, Tuvok he was a survival instructor at Starfleet Academy, so he knows a bunch of stuff.
Basically, did the Vulcan version of the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, the Vulcan Scouts. Chakotay gives a funny but it shouldn't be line. You're with the only Indian in the quadrant who can't start a fire by rubbing two sticks together. That's not good. But yeah, whatever. He said it. It was and I never knew until you told me that his whole character was based around some super fake guy who claimed to be a native in indigenous cultures and Native American culture. So I wonder if this guy was still on staff at that time, because that was a bad line. That was kind of a thumbs down. So, I mean, for me, all the stuff on the planet is kind of like, they meet some pre-verbal natives who they can't talk to, and Neelix and Kess get kidnapped by him, and then one of them gets,
of course they do,
gets trapped on a molten lava rock or whatever, and it's just an amazing kind of shit show of stuff. Now back on the ship, we're getting time with the Doctor and Suter, who is the exceptional Brad Dourif. Everybody loves Brad Dourif. He's been in everything and he's fantastic. The Paris part of it is like, okay, he's on a shuttlecraft and he recruits some Talaxians to help retake the ship. But I mean, for me, the most interesting part of anything is watching Brad Dourif do Suter, because it's an interesting character. You're watching kind of that struggle, but the whole episode as a whole, you're wrapping up a story that kind of sucked in the first place. So it's kind of hard for me to put any interest behind it. So anyway, what did you think?
I think it was kind of a bad ending for Seska.
Yeah.
As great of a villain as she was, she died like trying to get to her baby. And I was like, come on, like she was such a great villain, and she was devious and so maniacal and so calculating. And I just felt like she kind of got the short end of the stick. Now, granted, later on in the series, she kind of comes back, which is great.
We get her on the holodeck.
Yeah.
Do we get her twice? No, I was thinking twice, but it's just one. And it's even later in the season. It's the episode of worst case scenario at the end, closer to the end of the season.
Yeah, so she does have a little bit of a resurgence, which I think is a little bit of a better ending for her in that sense. But definitely the highlights were the Doctor and Suter. First off, they had a great dynamic as the Doctor's really coming into his own. He's learning subterfuge and how to kind of work his way through command. And then, Suter's struggling because he's like, I don't want to have to kill people, but I'm going to have to kill people. This is the entire thing that I've been fighting against. Right. And so the Doctor's trying to help him through that. And he's obviously not really understanding the mental dynamics of that, because he's like, no, it'll be fine. Like, you'll be okay. It's going to be in self-defense. You'll be great. And Suter's like, yeah, I don't think you understand. So I did particularly enjoy just on top of like when they were on the planet and it was just mistake after mistake after mistake, where Neelix in that, yellow shirt are just walking up and they see these bones in front of a cave. And Neelix literally says, this looks like a do not disturb sign. And then he asks the dude to just pick up all the bones. And I'm like, literally, do not disturb. Let's disturb it. Come on, Neelix.
Yes.
Would you think for 5 seconds, please?
Is Neelix the Taylor Swift of this? It's not me. I'm the problem. It's me.
Yes, Neelix is the problem.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. Just, Seska getting electrocuted and being like, that is a very, very lame entrance to really what ends up being the series' best films, not counting like, the Borg and blah, blah, blah. But I mean like a single dedicated, great villain bent out to to screw over the crew. Yeah, it was kind of sorry to see her go out like that. So yeah, thumbs down for the conclusion of what was a bad story to start with. So anyway, from there we move on to what I think is a pretty damn cool segment. So why don't you tell us about episode 2?
Yeah, so episode 2 is Flashbacks. It was directed by David Livingston and written by Brannon Braga, and it aired September 11th of 96. And this is when Tuvok experiences brain-damaging flashbacks to his service on the USS Excelsior. he and the captain attempt to find the reason for the flashbacks believed to be a suppressed memory through a joint mind meld.
Which never goes well.
It never goes well. They're always like, let's just do a mind meld. Anytime anyone mentions the mind meld, it's like the transporter accident thing. There's never been a transport accident. Oh, mind melds always go so well. No, they don't.
Or, any holodeck experience where, we turn the safeties off or the safeties could go off. Just things that are just big friggin' red flags.
You should not be able to turn safeties off in the holodeck. I don't even know why that's an option.
I don't know. Yeah, it was somebody's backdoor stupid idea. So this aired in conjunction with the 30th anniversary of the franchise, and then also with the exceptional Trials and Tribulations from Deep Space Nine, which was in season 4 of that show, which we will talk about, way on down the line. So I loved this without a doubt. We get George Takei back as Captain Sulu. Mm-hmm. We get Ann Arbor, Michigan's own Janice Rand, whose name is now escaping me, but she's a Michigan native. Why can't I remember the name of the actress who played Janice Rand? It's going to come to me in a minute. I'm so embarrassed.
You'll think of it when you're laying in bed tonight, and it'll just pop in your mind.
I refuse to Google it because I will not be inauthentic on this show. Grace Lee Whitney. There you go. Boom. That didn't take long at all. That was great. They played a little fast and loose with the character who was Dimitri Valtain, the other bridge character, because it was pointed out when this episode aired that this is all it's a micro add-on to the events of Star Trek VI. And the Excelsior is part of it. It's pointed out at the end of Star Trek VI where you see everyone on the Enterprise bridge talking to everyone on the Excelsior bridge that Valtain is standing in the background, although according to this, he was dead. So twin brother on board. Very nice. I also just don't get the housing situation on the Excelsior, because you see two officers, a junior officer, Tuvok, who's an ensign, and a senior officer, who's Valtain, who has the rank of lieutenant commander, sharing bunks in a bunk bed. And they also sleep in their uniforms. Super. I mean, maybe it's a nap station as opposed to a real living arrangement, but that's a pretty big ship. It's not big like the Enterprise D, but it's definitely bigger than the Enterprise A, where everybody, prior to Star Trek VI had their own little, junior officers or enlisted people might share bunks, but officers certainly never would. So that was a little weird to me. Obviously that worked for that scene because the two of them are having kind of some back and forth about the fact that, Valtain's like, well, you Vulcans need to chill out. Tuvok's like, I will not chill out. I'm a Vulcan and bird. And, all the while, all the interactions, the mind version of present day Tuvok and then Janeway, who's with him, are kind of talking through like, well, he said, well, back in that day, I was a young man. I was kind of a dickhole. I didn't really get humans, and I only went to Starfleet because my parents pressured me to, and so on and so forth. But I later learned, that when I settled down and went through the Ponfar again and married and started to have kids, I started to get more of appreciation for the bigger world. And 50 years later is when I went back to Starfleet, which I thought was a super cool. I've always liked Tuvok as a character, and I thought,
he's a great character.
I think learning about his background in this way was a really unique and cool way to pull it off. Plus, both 30th anniversary segments touched different parts of the original series, which I really thought was great in different ways. So I thought this was really well done. And again, done in a very Star Trek-y science fiction-y kind of way, like, hey, I've got a weird memory fragment, but it's really a virus that was never a real memory. It's just it's a microbe that did this thing or that thing. It's just super very Star Trek. And for me, the purpose of it absolutely works for the story. So I was very pleased with this episode back then, and I was watching it again.
I was fine with the weird science mumbo jumbo for the story in itself, and I had a different perspective because the first time I watched this, I kind of was like, oh, Spock's just kind of like a D-hole, and he's just being uppity as a Vulcan, and he's just being his kind of Vulcan self. But rewatching it, having just watched Picard season 3 and listening to Shaw critique kind of the Picard and like hero narrative of always putting people in danger so that you can be the hero, you have to buck the rules because you know better than the establishment, which is literally the exact thing that Tuvok had an issue with as far as what now I want to say McCoy, and I'm like, no, they were going to save McCoy.
No, yeah, it was Sulu and
Thank
Rand, right?
you.
For him just
Yes.
saying, those men are my family, and I'm going for it. It's like, but we could all be dead. Well,
Right.
F
You're
it, I don't
risking
care.
the entire ship, and you're not trusting Starfleet to
Right.
do what they said they're going to do, and you're saying that you know better. And so I kind of looked at that with a new lens because of all of the critique of season 3 of Picard having that kind of same through line.
Right. So yeah, I totally dug it. So definitely top shelf season, top shelf episode of the season so far.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, number 3. Speaking of going from the top to the bottom of the chute, that would be episode 3, The Chute. This is directed by Les Lando, story by Clayvon C. Harris, not a Star Trek name, a teleplay by Ken Biller. So I'm guessing that this is possibly a slush pile script that was polished off by somebody on the writing staff from September of '96. Paris and Kim are wrongfully accused, convicted, and incarcerated. We don't even see the first of those two things, but we see this in an underguard Acritarian prison. But it's unguarded, not underground, because it's a satellite, so it's in space. Tom gets stabbed trying to protect Kim, leaving him to try to find an escape plan alone. Meanwhile, Voyager is finding a way to try to prove their innocence. I'm not gonna lie to you, I barely paid attention while this episode was on because it just did not grab me. I love Paris and Kim, and really, if I'm a Patreon subscriber to the Delta Flyers, which is the podcast that Robbie McNeil and Garrett have, where they break down every episode of the series, and they're actually almost at their conclusion. They're in season 7 right now, so this would be way back, but it's worth a scroll. I'm curious how they felt about this episode, about the two of them. You know what I mean? But I just didn't really dig it. I don't know. How about you?
I both loved and hate this episode because I do think it's a really great kind of discussion about privilege in the judicial system, because it's very obvious when Tom and Harry come in, they're like, oh, well, obviously, like, who do we talk to? Where are the guards? Like, what do we do? And everybody there's just like, you're an idiot. No one's going to come and save you. No one's going to do anything. You're here now. You're going to die here because that's how this works. Right. And they set them up to fail. And it's just one of those things of when you have privilege and don't have to acknowledge the failures in the judicial system, you just don't acknowledge that they're there until it hits you in the face. So I really liked that. Everything else about it, just, I don't know if it's just the way that it was written or if it's just, I mean, I don't know. You said that you love Paris and Kim. Honestly, they're my least favorite probably of the bridge crew.
You know,
I mean, they're not like, it's not that they're bad. It's just every time I'm like, I'd rather listen to the Doctor or, 7 of 9 or, Janeway, like find out.
Yeah, I may have developed more of an affinity of the actors because of listening to the show. But yeah, now that you say it, I don't, they're not my top 2 favorite. I like Chakotay and Tuvok because, and Janeway, of course. But you're right. I would tend to put them to the bottom. And I mean, Harry Kim is not a really fascinating and deep character. But again, I met Garrett. I met him on the cruise, and I've listened to the show for since it started, on and off. So I definitely enjoy that. But yeah, they're more enjoyable than their characters are. But yeah, at the end of it, they're both back on the ship, and they're like, the only thing Tom, I was going crazy and I was going to kill you because they all have these little implants that make them go nuts. And so in the end, they turned on each other, but they do end up getting rescued. Janeway has this great slide down the chute. She pops up with the rifle, and okay, that was a pretty good moment. I'll give him that much. But at the end, Paris is just like, I just remember that my buddy was going to save me. Do. And then they walk off, to the mess hall to have a big fancy meal. And it was like, it felt like the end of a sitcom. You know what I mean? And it just didn't really do it for me. So
yeah, I think that story-wise, it was an interesting story. I think that I just wasn't interested in the character. Like, I think having Torres in there with having to deal with her aggression, her natural aggression as a Klingon, and also having an increased aggression implant that's giving her all of these extra endorphins for aggression. Like, that would have been incredibly interesting to see her have to deal with that.
Yes. No. Oh, you're absolutely right.
Or like her and Chakotay, especially because they have a bond, and watching that bond get some friction on it, I think that would have been really interesting.
Oh my God. I didn't even think about it that way.
Yeah. Part of the problem is that Paris, you hit the nail on the head where, like, Kim especially, he just has no story to him. It's, well, my parents made me, I have a tiger mom. Like, it's just the most stereotypical just Asian family trope that they get like kind of slapped on him, and then we're just like, I don't know, he
Big
just
time.
does his thing.
There's another, and I keep referencing other podcasters, but there's a Mission Log, which is part of the Roddenberry Network. It's John Champion and another guy's name who I'm forgetting, but the other guy that I'm thinking of is Asian. And it was the same thing. I was listening to one of these episodes. He was talking about Harry Kim, and he said, well, Kim is practices clarinet. He says, I just keep hearing my mother say, practice, Harry, practice. And the podcaster says, well, as an Asian, that was my mom. And so, yeah, you're right. It was just stereotypical heaven, much like all of the Native American tropes that got pinned on Chakotay that really started to slop off as the series went on, which I think helped.
See, now all I'm thinking about are the cool character combinations, because you have Tuvok, who has his natural aggression, and then you have Torres. That would have been fantastic too.
Right. Yeah, and the good news is we did see that in the episode with Suter back in season 2 with Tuvok losing his emotional control. And then we see it with Torres when Vorik accidentally transfers his Ponfar to her in his episode later this season called Blood Fever, where she goes through she goes through the Ponfar, and eventually she fights Vorik, and it was pretty sweet. So you did get your wish. They just did it in a weird way, and it was kind of a weird combo. So anyway, well, cool. All right. Episode 4 is The Swarm. Ooh, that's all you.
All right. So we have The Swarm, directed by Alexander Singer, written by Mike Sussman, and that aired September of 96. We have the Voyager encounters a swarm of ships while trying to take a shortcut through space belonging to a hostile species, while the Doctor begins to experience memory loss. And this one, we got some Doctor episodes. I enjoy the Doctor for the most part, besides when he starts getting a little bit weird with people.
Right.
So I thought this one was really great. And it kind of showed how, like, on one end, you had this network building around the ship to destroy it. And at the same time, he's losing his network.
Right.
It's like all of his memories and everything are kind of decompressing and, getting lost. And you got to see his original incarnation through
the holodeck,
the help
maintenance program,
the help desk holodeck,
help desk. Oh God, that could be a better name for the episode. Help desk holodeck. I like that, and this was the first dual role of Bob Picardo doing Louis Zimmerman, who is the creator. Help desk holodeck.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I do really appreciate being able to see both of those characters, and I think he does a good job playing both the characters. It's not. I hate to compare, but I will, because I'm that person. But it's no Brett Spiner playing Lore and Data and everybody, but he still does a really good job, I think, differentiating between those two characters.
Right. And we actually see Louis Zimmerman not only in this show, but he crosses over to Deep Space Nine, because there's that project where he's supposed to turn Bashir's template into a long-term hologram, and then through that we stumble upon the fact that he's genetically engineered in season, I think, 5 of DS9. So I thought this one was okay. Again, we get another disposable monster of the week that's uber deadly, but Voyager defeats him in the first 5 minutes. Yeah,
I honestly had no interest in that secondary plot.
Yeah,
with the whole
exactly.
Hive swarm thing.
But it's just like, we stumbled upon a ship and the swarm ate them, and but it's okay. Well, then they never come up again. We did have one super cool shot that I kind of remembered of it's a space shot of the ship in the foreground, or the ship in the midground, and the swarm in the background, and the Voyager flying forward, and the swarm kind of following them. I thought that was a cool shot. That was about kind of the only thing I really, really dug on about that. So, okay, moving on. Episode 5 of 7 that we're going to tackle this episode is False Prophets. Directed by Cliff Bowles, story by George Brozak, and teleplay by Joe Minoski, who is a regular of the series from October of 96. The crew encounters the Delta Quadrant terminus of the Barzan wormhole and the two Ferengi from the TNG episode The Price, now posing as gods on a nearby planet. What a fun episode. I liked this. I mean, the Ferengi are always played for giggles. They even managed to get the same two actors who played in the previous episode, which was 7 years prior. And I suppose it's probably, a feat to actually snag actors back, even though they were just two character actors. But still, I thought that was cool. We do get, through this, Johnny Phillips, or it's fun. Everybody calls him Johnny, and he was called Johnny when I was on the cruise because he was there. But Ethan / Johnny Phillips as as a fake Ferengi, the grand proxy, playing up and trying to get these two Ferengi to give up their post, while we get the typically dangled, like, here's a way home, we could jump through the Barzan wormhole and it'll take us back to the Alpha Quadrant, thus ending the series. And naturally, through some tech shenanigans, the Ferengi try to jump in their shuttle and leave at the same time, and Voyager has to hit them with a blobbity blue wave, and that changes the wormhole, and now the wormhole is broken and it jumps away, and the other end of it jumps away too, so now the wormhole is useless. So
yeah,
that was pretty convenient. So yeah, the end of it was
long line of them. Almost getting home.
Yeah, exactly. Almost counts on horseshoes and hand grenades. So the middle part, the first 2/3 of this I thought were pretty fun. Ferengi shenanigans and Ferengi just doing what they do, trying to make profit and ripping off this naive civilization on this planet. They were all kind of dressed like Aladdin with the fancy shoes. They kept making shoes references, like, those are some nice shoes.
They really did.
Yeah, they were. This was kind of the shoe fetish society, but they were all really dressed like it was, like the Turkish bazaar and the looking like Aladdin. But whatever. I mean, and their servant's guy's name was Jafar. I mean, they were taking it to that Aladdin kind of spot. So yeah, I enjoyed that. But yeah, the techno babble end of like, oh, we almost got home, and yeah, I just. You don't know how everybody on this crew is not so whacked out on drugs of some kind because of the crippling depression of never being able to get ahead. But no, this was fun. And this was during a brief period of time when I actually stopped watching the series for a little while because I was kind of getting a little fed up. I these first few episodes, I just found so stupid that I think even after somewhere between or maybe after episode 7 of the segment, I quit for a little while. And that was the only Star Trek break I ever took since I started watching of any show, since I started watching in the fall of 92 in TNG season 5. So yeah, this particular segment broke me from watching Voyager. Ugh. So any other thoughts about this one?
Yeah, I just really enjoyed when, the episode popped up and I was like, hey, I know those Ferengi. So I think it was just a really great way to tie in kind of a loose end of TNG and bring it about. And again, seeing Neelix as a Ferengi, that was a really fun kind of expansion of that role and letting him kind of expand on his acting chops. I mean, he does a lot of character acting. He does a lot of prosthetics. So I'm sure it wasn't that big of a stretch for him to move into kind of a different type. But it was still really, really fun to see. And yeah, overall, I just thought it was a very funny episode with the way that they were able to use kind of the prophecy against them. Yeah. And also I like how they keep messing with the word prophet.
Right.
Because didn't we have one from DS9 that was also named something prophet?
Prophet and lace or prophet motive. We had a bunch, really, but yeah. So yeah, got to hit the Ferengi where they live. So yeah, that was a fun one. This next one I really ended up digging it way more than I thought. But it's yours. Go for it. Real short description too.
Episode 6, we have Remember, directed by Windage Colby, story by Brandon Braga and Joe Manoski, and the teleplay by Lisa Klink. And that one aired October 9th of 96, and our description is just B'Elanna experiences vivid dreams.
That sucks. And I will say, if I can, Brandon Braga, Joe Manoski, and then Lisa Klink, who was an emerging member of the writing staff, are all Star Trek superstars. And I think that's what contributed to, in my opinion, in this being just a fantastic episode. But anyway, please.
Yeah, I would say, this is a very solid episode. We end up getting introduced to a new race, Elorans. I don't remember what they're called.
The Elorians are that's Guinan species, but all right, I'll
never mind.
The dog objects. Let's see here. The Enarans. That's not so far off.
It was close. I was very close. So
it's close. It's very, very close.
Also, telepathic species. They kind of can share thoughts and experiences, so they can share knowledge, which is really cool. But B'Elanna turns out not accidentally, starts reliving one of their lives when they were younger. And so she keeps having these dreams, and she realizes that it's kind of a story that's playing itself out. So she has to go through until the end, when she discovers that there is a lot more to this kind of paradise type utopia that met the eye.
Right. No, exactly. I absolutely loved it. And again, it touches on a parable in any society. Like, we have this undesirable cast and we're going to move them along to a place where they'll be more comfortable. And, not to dig too deep into the allegories of the Trail of Tears or anything like that in this country, but essentially took an entire subsect of their own race, their people on their planet, and in this case, they just decided to kill them. It was kind of no big deal. Well, all the while, propaganda saying, well, these people, they didn't want to live our way of life, and they wouldn't, wash their butt, or whatever it is. They didn't want our technology, and so this propaganda is so impressed upon the character that B'Elanna is living this through, and we see B'Elanna living as this person in the past, wearing her clothes and speaking as her. That she loves a young man from the sect and whatever it is, and ultimately the propaganda wins her over, and she turns him over and then watches him get burned alive. That's great. What you wouldn't. This is one of those Meatloaf moments. I'd do anything for love, but I won't do that. Ouch, crispy. But
Yeah.
yeah, this and then you see her as the character later on walking along a group of school children, just relaying the propaganda, pushing it on to another generation after all of the indigenous, sect has been eliminated. So really, really telling. And at the end of it, B'Elanna comes out and says, she confronts the Inarans who are still on the ship in present day and says, you did this thing, you whatever it is. And Janeway's like, well, that's a pretty strong accusation to make without proof. And the doctor's not able to scan it and prove it, but B'Elanna is able to have a conversation with a young Inaran woman who Harry has been hitting on and obviously not closing the deal because they don't, Harry just doesn't really doesn't have the touch.
Again, Harry, he doesn't have a personality.
Yeah.
We've
Yes.
been through this.
I am Harry Kim. Would you like to go out with me? Meet Mop Morp. I cannot feel emotion. But B'Elanna is able to spin the memories onto this young lady, and then that's where the episode ends. So, it gives you that nice, satisfying conclusion that, hey, somebody in their society is able to go home and then carry on the investigation and potentially expose this. So I loved it.
Yeah, there was that really great scene between B'Elanna and the leader of, this new race that we're introduced to that just was really, really fantastic. And it really showed kind of what a master manipulator he was, because he just, every time she was like, no, I know that this is what I saw. You killed this woman because she was giving me your memories. And he's like, oh, well, I'm sure, this feels very real for you. But
right.
Are you sure this is what happened? And it just was a lot of
serious ghosting.
And just kind of that manipulative abuse that you see from an abuser when they're making you guess everything that's happened.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. No, this was intense, and this was an episode I wouldn't say I remembered extremely well, but to me, the strongest of the bunch. I definitely think, or definitely a top contender. So, okay. Rounding it off with episode 7, Sacred Ground. First episode directed by Robert Duncan McNeil, which he's Tom Paris, of course. And he goes on, obviously, after Voyager is over, he does direct a few more episodes, another one of which they just discussed on their podcast recently. But he went on in the 2000s to direct, shows like Dawson's Creek and One Tree Hill and a lot of that kind of CW, UPN, Warner Brothers fare, and is still directing today. He is he was creatively involved in the show Chuck, in shaping that show, and then also the show Resident Alien, which April and I have watched a little bit of, and that's over on USA or something. Just a great show. It's really, really, really cool. He's completely out of acting and doing this, and has this great second career, so I think it's awesome. So anyway, story by Geo Cameron, not a Star Trek name. And again, Lisa Klink, who's obviously she's an emerging in the story room at this time. So from October of 1996, Kes is left comatose after contacting an energy field around a rock. What a great description.
That description is just, that is an amazing description. That's exactly how I feel about this episode.
that is Kes around a rock. Well, it's funny because obviously the real B story around this is, challenging Janeway's perceptions of going on this this spiritual journey when she's this hardcore scientist, but she has to go through this process to potentially find a cure for Kes. And Kes is just the Wesley Crusher of this episode. It reminds me, and I watched not long ago, of that season 1 episode on the planet with the naked people, where Wesley falls into the plants and they're going to kill him because it's their law. It's just, things are fine until Kes comes along and screws something up. That's kind of what this one felt like to me.
That's the thing. Like, they wander away and she's like, this looks interesting. And Neelix is like, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't touch. She's like, no, I'm going to touch it. And then, of course, something goes bad. I'm like,
right.
Why?
Touch. Yeah.
I'm like, I get that she's like kind of like childlike, but
because she's two.
Stupid.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, she's 2 by our years, but in normal parlance, she's in her 20s or whatever. You'd like to think she's even and in a relationship with Neelix, who's probably 50. Oh God, let's not talk about that. Ugh,
we're not going to go there.
Yeah. So I mean, there were in the B story with Jane in the B. I don't know what's the B story and the A story. I feel like Kes is the B story because it's
it's just kind of a plot point to get to the Janeway conflict. Religion versus or spirituality versus science thing.
Yeah, exactly. So and they drag that. They say drag it out, but I mean they portray it out through 2/3 of the episode. And the Kes part is just a bit at the beginning, but much like back in Basics Part 2, where Kes gets kidnapped, and then she's this and that with it's just she is the. Like I said, her and Neil, as a pair, they're just there to create issues that drive our characters into something plot related. They are the alien ex machina, whatever. I don't know. I'll think of a better title as things goes on, but certainly, and when they break the duo up, when Kes leaves the show in the next season, I think it's better, even though Kes is not around, it's definitely better for Neelix's character to not have Kes around, because she doesn't quite, you're not dealing with him quite getting into so much dumb stuff. So yeah, I thought, it was certainly well directed, because again, I like Robbie Duncan McNeil's work, and but yeah, I think again, kind of coming from the slush pile of the scripts, I think this came from somebody outside of Star Trek who was trying to do something interesting, which I feel like potentially they accomplished with the Janeway part. But yeah, the Kes touched a rock and now she's in a coma. Just really not playing it out.
I don't know. Maybe it's just because there's so much going on with the whole feelings not facts thing that happens a lot, where it's like, well, it doesn't matter if it's true because it's what I believe. So I'm very much in the Janeway camp of give me some hard science.
Sure.
Just because I don't understand how it works doesn't mean that you can't explain how it works. It just means we don't have the knowledge to explain how it works.
Right. And we have to get there by doing science, right?
Yeah. And so their whole they kept just jiving on her because they were like, oh, well, you just want to figure out how it works. I'm like, why is that a bad thing? Why are you guys ragging on her for wanting knowledge and for wanting to understand, this thing that nearly killed a crew member? I don't know. I get the arguments that they were making as far as on a philosophical level, but also I was like, I don't like this. Y'all are acting like science isn't important here, or it's not as important as your spirits, which
with your energy rocks or whatever. Yeah.
Right. And I get if that's what you believe, that's totally awesome, but don't impose that on someone else.
Right. Well, I mean,
and kill someone because you want to impose it on someone else.
Just like Wesley and the naked people and the plants and stuff.
Exactly.
Same thing. We have an idyllic society, but if you step on the plants, we're going to have to give you a lethal injection because that's how we maintain law.
That is a don't touch the grass sign.
Yeah.
That you better follow.
Don't touch butt. That's always the thing in a men's room with a hand dryer. Some smart ass will scratch that off. So don't touch butt or press butt, like press button. It just makes you think this is the don't press butt moment. But we'll stick with help desk holodeck. That's much better because I'm going to avoid putting the word butt in the title. So okay, so that takes us to the end of these 7. Let's have a favorite and a least favorite. Go for it.
I would say favorite is probably going to be, I'm going to say Remember, just because I really liked that confrontation with B'Elanna at the end.
Same.
Least favorite, I'm probably going to say, is the shoot, just because it was there. and it existed as an episode.
It was filler for the week. Yeah, it's a close tie for me because again, remember I thought rock solid story with a great writing staff and a great performance by Roxanne Dawson. I'm jammed between. No, I'm definitely going to go with the shoot. Because otherwise I could say, I thought Basics sucked because I hated the setup. But I liked the bits in it that had to do with Brad Dourif's performance as Suitor. But yeah, the shoot was like we accomplished nothing. We got no we got no character development in a character that ultimately, sorry, Garrett, Harry, Kim just didn't really end up with any character at the end of it. So yeah, kind of Dudsville. So all right, well, we've successfully tackled our first quarter of Star Trek Voyager. So we will be back next week with not only the finale of Picard, which will be quite a lengthy discussion, but also a quick breakdown not only of the season, but probably a bit of the series in general. And then we will tackle the next 6 episodes of Voyager. So thanks for joining. For more information about Starfleet International, please visit the Grand Petoskey on Facebook, Twitter, and a website of the same name. Kay, where do people find you out there in the socials?
You can find me on Twitter at QTGeek, that's Q_T Geek, and on Counter Social at K Quinn.
Oh, yeah. And as always, you can find me over on Twitter at the C3, spell it out. You can find Secret Friends Unite over and the Grand Petoskey over on our very active Discords channel. Certainly get in touch with us. We would love to have you join us. As mentioned, my lovely wife April and I do run the USS Grand Petoskey, one of the biggest chapters of Starfleet International, the International Star Trek Fan Club. We're based here in West Michigan, but I'm also responsible for Region 13, which is Michigan and Eastern Canada. If you're listening to the sound of my voice and live in one of those places, please drop me a line at the socials or website of the Grand Petoskey, and we can connect you with more trekkers. We met lots of great trekkers down in Kalamazoo, Michigan at the Grand Rapids Comic-Con Spring Show the last couple of days, and I look forward to reaching out to all those people pretty quickly here. So with that, I'm going to tell you as always that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
And wherever you go, go boldly.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.